Fight for Justice is brought to you by the Kia Store of Anniston and Rainbow City.
Welcome to Fight for Justice. In this edition, we have another special guest. I'm Arthur Fite, and Freeman Fite's with me tonight. We're in the Fite Law Firm, and we want to try to bring you an entertaining show week by week so that you can learn a little bit more about the law and what we do and what we like to help you do. Tonight, our special guest is Peggy Miller Locker. She's a practicing attorney here in Anniston, Alabama, and has been since 1995. So I'm going to bring Peggy on the show right now. Peggy, thank you for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
We're glad to have you. Let's start and talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your background, about that, where you went to high school and college and law school.
Well, I'm a lifelong resident of Calhoun or Cleveland counties, and I went to high school in Welborn. I grew up in Welborn. My dad still lives out in Welborn. I graduated high school in 1985 and went to Jacksonville State University. I worked during the day and went to school at night.
What did you get a degree in Jacksonville?
I have a major in business and a minor in accounting.
Ooh. Mm-hmm. All right. And so when you began practicing law, where did you start? Did you start here?
I started here in Calhoun County. I sure did.
In 1995. Were you with anyone else or by yourself?
I went into office with Todd Caldwell.
And I remember that.
That's right. I stayed with Todd until 2007. I opened my own firm in 2007.
Good. Now, just for the viewers' information, you and I have battled each other on many cases.
On many cases.
And we worked together on a few.
That's correct.
All right. So it's been fun knowing Peggy all these years, and she does a great job. Peggy, tell us, do you have an area that you try to specialize in or spend most of your time in?
I do the majority of my work is domestic relations cases. I handle divorce, custody, child support, visitation. I also do a lot of juvenile court cases.
So that's where you and I have fought each other a little bit on the domestic side.
That's correct.
And as you know, we do a wide variety of things, so don't just count domestic. Well, let me ask you, how many cases have you handled since you've been practicing law?
Total cases would be at a minimum of 4,000. Now, the juvenile court numbers I don't have access to those. And I know I've had at least 1,000 juvenile court cases.
Our viewers might be interested in how you know that. Do you keep up with them, or is there a way to find that out?
We actually did an Alicourt search. And what you can do is put your name into Alicourt, and it tells you every case that your name is associated with, that you've been attorney of record on. And total cases were about 4,000 for me. About 3,000 of those were strictly in domestic relations.
Tell our viewers what Alicourt is.
Alicourt is a computerized system where you can go on and you can actually research cases that are pending or have been pending with the court. You can pull up different pleadings that are associated with that case, and it tells the person's name, it gives addresses, it gives the attorney's name. It's just a computerized file, basically.
And you can look at the documents that way.
That's correct.
Like the complaint for divorce, and see what subpoenas have been issued and things like that.
That's correct.
Now, how did you drift into domestic relations work, or did you just fall into it? How'd that happen?
A little bit of both. When I actually started working when I was 15 years old, I worked half a day and then I went to school half a day and then went to work in the afternoon, and I started working for a local divorce court attorney. And I worked for him until I turned 20. And when I turned 20, one of the attorneys that was in our office got appointed as a family court judge. And I went to work for family court as his judicial assistant. And then I worked during the day as his judicial assistant, and I went to law school and college at night. And I guess because I worked for so many years in family court, it just kind of became a niche for me.
I didn't ask you about your family. Are you married and you got children?
I am.
Tell us about that.
I'm married to Grady Locker. He's a guidance counselor at Oxford High School. He's been employed at Oxford High School for the last 20 years. I've got a daughter, Jana Miller. She's 23. She works at the district attorney's office, and she goes to law school also. Got a son, Tide. You can tell I'm an Alabama fan. Tide's 13, and he's a 7th grader at Oxford Middle School.
Okay.
Honor Society, runs cross country, and he's on the debate team.
And you keep up with him when he runs cross country?
I go to the events.
Oh, go to convince. All right.
We go from point A to point B to, we certainly can't run like he does.
Let's talk a minute about divorce cases. Freeman and I did a segment on that earlier this year, and we want to know about it from your perspective.
Okay.
Do you like handling divorce cases?
I do. It's a sad time for anybody's life, so I don't like that aspect of it. But I feel like I'm very good at it, and I feel I'm compassionate, and that I can advise people the best way that will help them long run.
And what do you, when you first get into a new case, what is it you try to find out initially up front?
Well, what I do is I've got all my basic information that I want to get, names, addresses, telephone numbers. We go into what all they own, the assets as far as, their house, their retirement, different accounts that they've got, different debt that they've got. And of course you go into the custody aspects. And one of the things that I learned fairly early on is when people are going through a divorce, a lot of times they're not, they don't look at things as objectively as they should. And what I typically will do is I will ask them.
They don't? A lot of emotion.
There's a lot of emotion, and you're upset for whatever reason that you're getting a divorce. You're upset with that person because of it. But I'll ask them to describe their spouse as a parent, not as a spouse. And a lot of times what I'll get is this great dad or great mom, no safety concerns, good bond with the children. And then that helps me guide them better on down the line, because a lot of times people put the emotion into it, and it will sometimes affect custody issues, and it shouldn't.
Let me ask you this, in comparison to what we've found over the years, how many times have you, what percentage maybe do you find that cases are settled right off the bat without having to go through discovery, a lot of depositions, and maybe a trial?
Probably 50%. Probably 50% right off the bat. What I'll try and do when I meet with somebody is I'll sit down and talk to them about what would be a reasonable expectation. Yeah. And I'll tell them, go talk to your spouse. It's better for you and your husband or you and your wife to make these decisions than to have a judge make these decisions when the judge doesn't know you or your family or anything along those lines.
You ask them up front, what do they expect, what do they want to achieve?
Usually I'll tell them what I think is practical for them to achieve. And in that way they know if their expectations are too high or too low.
Okay. All right, in this segment we have about 30 seconds left. Remy, do you have anything you want to chime in with here?
Well, I just wanted to basically ask you about, we're going to get into this in greater detail later, but specifically about custody. Do you think that the courts favor women over men?
We're not going to be able to answer that in 10 seconds in the segment. So when we come back in the second segment, we'll get more detailed answer from you.
That sounds great.
All right. And we'll also talk about what that sticker means on your shirt there, not on your shirt, but your blouse there.
Okay.
All right. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. Okay, welcome back to the second segment of Fight for Justice, and we're talking about divorce cases. And we're talking with our guest today, Peggy Miller Locker. She's been on the first segment. Again, welcome, Peggy. And Freeman was asking her some interesting questions, but I do want to interject this. You don't see a hyphenated last name very often. How did you decide to do that?
Well, I practiced law under Peggy Miller for the last 18 years, but I've actually been Peggy Locker, that's my husband's name, for the past 15 years. People just knew me as Miller, so I never changed the last name for practice purposes, but it's been my legal name during all that period of time.
Locker.
Locker, yeah. When I announced I was running for office, I have to run under my legal name. Yeah. So I went ahead and changed it professionally at that stage to Peggy Miller Locker.
All right, Freeman, let's take back up where you were questioning her. An interesting question you had.
Yeah, I get asked a lot when people call, especially when men call, whether the courts favor women in custody battles. I kind of wanted to get your opinion on that, whether you think that happens or not.
Well, and we actually talked about this a little bit before we came on air, and in my opinion, they don't. In my opinion, what the courts do and what the courts are supposed to do is make a determination about who is the better parent for a child. And if that's the mama, then mama should get custody. If that's the dad, then dad should get custody. But it should always be based on what is best for that baby, for that child.
Well, how do you feel about split custody?
Split custody either works perfectly or it works horribly, and it depends on the parent, and it depends on the child.
Yeah.
If you've got two parents that can make mutual decisions about their child and always put that child first, it is a wonderful situation that gives that child good quality time with both mom and dad.
Now, tell us about what split custody means and what kind of a different arrangements you can have for split custody.
Split custody is an equal sharing of the child, and it's equal decision making of the child and equal responsibilities to the child. And that can be the baby being with mom 1 week and dad 1 week, or it could be that the child is with one parent Monday, Tuesday, and the other one Wednesday, Thursday, and it alternates weekends. People at Honda, a lot of times what you'll see is 2 weeks with one, 2 weeks with the other, you know, to go with their rotating shifts.
That's not going to work if one of the parents lives in a different city.
You have to live close to one another, and you have to have the same basic parenting styles and techniques, and you have to always put the child first. There can't be a power struggle between mom and dad. If there's a power struggle between mom and dad, it historically does not work, and the child suffers.
Do you think that works better the older the child is?
Not necessarily. Now, if you've got a 16-year-old that's got a driver's license and a car, they're going to be going back and forth between mom and dad anyway. But if you've got a child that has always grown up with that type of routine, then that's the norm for that child.
Okay.
Do you favor the week on, week off, or the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, to the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then alternating weekends?
My preference actually is a week with mom, a week with dad, with the parent that doesn't have placement of the child getting to see the child at least one day during the week, like maybe a Wednesday or something, so that nobody has to go a long time without seeing their child, and the child doesn't have to go a long time without seeing a parent.
I'd have to agree with that.
Have you noticed over the years, I have, a change in the desire of fathers for custody?
I have.
Tell us what you've noticed.
Well, it's, I grew up, and I've got a wonderful dad, best dad that ever was, and great mom, but my mama did everything when it come to the kids. Daddy, worked, and he paid the bills, and he ran the household, but mama did everything when it came to the kids. And that's just not what you see now. What you see now is it takes two parents to pay the bills. Both parents are working full time. And if it takes two of you during your marriage to raise that child, then at the time of your divorce, if you're getting a divorce, it usually takes two of you still. So fathers are taking a lot more active role, and mothers are taking a lot more active role in being the primary breadwinner, or at least an equal breadwinner. It's just the times have changed.
They have. And do you see as a result of that, the courts are leaning a little bit more towards split custody arrangements, if the circumstances are right?
If the circumstances are right, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that you're in a judge's race right now.
That's correct.
You're trying to become the judge for handling domestic relations cases.
That's correct.
When did you decide to do this?
I actually decided to, I've kind of batted it around for a little over a year, but I officially decided last June.
And then when did you officially qualify?
Last June.
Okay, I thought it was qualified in February.
Well, you have to qualify it as far as going in and paying your money to the state was in February, and I did that in February. But as far as announcing and beginning to raise money, that was in June.
Have you found running for public office to be a tough grind?
It's tough, and it's also fun.
Yeah.
I've met a lot of people. There are so many events in Calhoun and Cleveland counties that I never even knew existed, that now I know they exist, and I have the opportunity to go and attend them.
So it's not, even if the campaign doesn't go like you want it to, you feel like it's been a winner.
I do.
Tell us about some of the events you've attended.
Well, let's see, just this last week, I went to Shamelessly Promote Yourself, which was a fundraiser for it was put on at the Parker House, and it was a fundraiser for a fund in Piedmont, as far as it was a food bank basically out there.
Well, let me interject this. We're in a two-county circuit.
That's correct.
As some of you may not know, Alabama is divided into judicial circuits. Some have as many as 4 counties, a lot of them just a single county. We're in 2 counties. So what do you have to do to campaign in 2 counties?
You have to go to both counties. You go to events in both counties. You meet people in both counties. Cleveland County is the other part of our circuit, and they've had several political forums there that we've gone to. Anything that's going on there, then we try and make it and go to it. Just this past Friday night, I was kind of tickled and laughing about it, but we went to the Oxford Quarterback Club, and I came home from the Quarterback Club and took my blue jeans and my boots off and put my evening gown on and went to Maskers the same night.
And that's from one end of the spectrum to the other.
It actually is. On Saturday, we went to a pancake breakfast at Trinity Church, and then after that, we actually volunteered. And I had several of my supporters that helped me with this for a League of Our Own, which is it was a phenomenal event. It's put on. Ginger Pilkington brainstormed this, and it's for children with special needs and that want to play ball and be able to participate in ball. So you assign a buddy to them, and they go out there and you play ball with them. And
Are you amazed at how many charitable events we have in this county and the city?
I'm very amazed. Yeah, we did.
It seems like it's every week.
It is. It did Boss's busing tables the other day to raise money. That? I did, for Community Enabler. So there's a lot of different
things. That's Maudine Holloway's.
It is, and she's a wonderful lady, does a lot of work for our community.
Let me go back to a little meat about what you're doing. You've been practicing now for since
18 years.
15 years.
18
years. Have you had anything unusual happen to you during your practice that you didn't expect that you can share with us?
A few things. I work a lot of times as a guardian for a child, and basically what that means is the court will sometimes appoint an attorney that is an advocate for that child. And I do a lot of juvenile court cases, which are cases where the Department of Human Resources has came in for whatever reason because of concern that a child's not safe in a home. There was one case in particular that we were going to do a drug screen because the dad in that case was saying that he was not using drugs, but there were allegations that he was. And at the courthouse, we sent him on to get the drug screen, and there's a device called a Whizzinator that that somebody can put on, and I guess it holds urine in it to fake a drug screen. Well, he bought the wrong size, and it didn't stay on. So that was a kind of comical.
That might be more detail. I know, that does happen, doesn't it?
That does happen.
We got 15 seconds left, so we're going to come back in a third segment here in a couple of minutes, and we'll continue this interesting discussion about funny things that happen when you're handling these type of cases. So 2 minutes, we'll see you back. Thank you. All right, welcome back to the third and final segment today of Fight for Justice, and we have as our guest Peggy Miller, who's been a practicing attorney here since 1995, and we've been talking about domestic relation cases, and we've been talking about some of the funny things that have happened in her course of practicing law here. And you were telling us about one, which I won't ask you to repeat. But what about depositions? They often have funny things happen in those?
Sometimes there's some funny things that happen in a deposition.
Can one come to mind?
It does. I had a deposition one time where individual faked a heart attack to be able to stop the deposition. So that was interesting. I had one time where the attorney on the other side's last name was Miller, just like my last name was, and it was a very contentious case where the people they were not getting along well at all. And when we walked in, he reached over and shook my hand, and he said, you realize that this is my wife, don't you? And of course, I was not his wife. But my client like to have had a heart attack at that point in time. And I had to calm him down, let him know the attorney on the other side was just teasing with him, that we were not related in any fashion.
That would have shocked me too.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about having faking a heart attack during the deposition. Some people may not know what a deposition is. Tell us what it is.
A deposition is a discovery tool when you're trying to find out information and facts that you can utilize in a trial. The person goes under oath, and the attorney can ask them questions that are directly related to information that would be relevant at a trial to discover information. Because their answers are under oath, then they have to be honest, or they could be subject to penalties of perjury. But that's how a lot of times that you will find out maybe monetary issues, or what the allegations are going to be in a custody battle, or if there's a boyfriend or a girlfriend, all kinds of things of that nature.
You know, we get asked a lot, and I know you do too, that after somebody gets a judgment of divorce and then they don't follow it, they don't do what they're supposed to, or maybe they're not happy with the judgment they got, what are the remedies that a party has after the case has been decided?
If they're not happy with it, and if it's within the appeal time, then they can appeal the decision. With any type of domestic relations case, it's very difficult to get a trial judge reversed because there's so much discretion that a judge has in dividing assets and making a ruling on domestic relations. But there is a remedy that they could do the appeal. If it's the appeal time has passed and you've got somebody that's just not complying with the judgment.
Say for example, not paying child support and not conveying a piece of property, what can they do?
They can file a petition for contempt, which is basically saying that this person was under a court order and that this person has willfully and knowingly failed to comply with that court order. And of course you have to prove that they were under the order, and you have to prove that they failed to comply and that they did that willfully. But if so, then it could be punishment of actually a judge could do a fine or incarceration as
Put
well.
them in jail.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, in my experience, they don't hardly ever do that the first time
Most
around.
of the time it tends to be a slap on the wrist, and then the second time sometimes you'll see jail time.
Gets serious. Okay, now let's go back to this office that you're running for. Tell us some things that are available for people in this court. Freeman, ask her about that if you would in a second. Go ahead.
Well, I'll let her speak generally on it, and then we'll get into specifics of what this, what she'd be in charge of.
Okay.
All right. Well, the position I'm running for is family court judge, and that is the judge that's assigned to hear any type of family court cases, such as divorce, custody, dependency, delinquency, adult protective supervision. There are also several different specialty courts that this judge is over. There is a juvenile drug court, and that is a drug court that for children that have been charged with delinquent acts and have substance abuse programs or problems. That is a court that these children can enroll in and then hopefully get counseling through, drug screens through. That was a very, very, very successful program previously.
Is this designed to keep people from going to jail immediately and see if they can kind of work their way through these problems?
Yes. A lot of times yes.
Does it work?
It should. It should. It's an opportunity. And when we're talking our juveniles,
Yeah.
there's nobody that we really should try and concentrate more on trying to keep them from going down a path, especially one that abuses substances, than a juvenile, because you can really change their lives and they can be very productive citizens as adults if you can stop it early.
Okay.
Does the juvenile court work like the adult drug court, where there's a color code program and things like that?
It's kind of almost defunct right now. What I would like to do if I got into that office is to get it back like it was. The adult portion of the juvenile drug court does have a color code. There's accountability. There's a really good success rate. There's a lot of people that participate in that program. Juvenile drug court needs to be grown back so that it would be comparable to that.
So what if you don't have the color code? What exactly goes on with? Because I've never been to juvenile drug court. What goes on?
They can have random drug screens as well. They just don't have. It's not as active currently as what it was. Now, previously, when it was run under Judge Phillips, it was run basically the same way that our adult juvenile drug court is run.
Okay, and there's also something I've heard talked about a little bit called Veterans Court. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Veterans
Court's a brilliant idea that is underutilized and needs to be utilized more. It's my understanding, I think the funding became available through a grant in 2012, but for whatever reason it was not. The first person pled into that program in February of 2014. My understanding, there's only 2 people that's in that program, only 2 people that's ever been in that program. Veterans Court is a wonderful idea. It's basically a person that's been charged with, a veteran that's been charged with a crime, and it's a deferment. That person pleads guilty up front, but then they enroll into the Veterans Court, they get counseling, they have random drug screens, they're assigned a battle buddy that basically is another veteran that would be going along with them, kind of like a sponsor, helping them with any problems that exist to keep them from going back the way that they were previously. Because they're veteran, they've got certain benefits, and the court will help them coordinate those benefits so that they can get services to help them. Once they complete that program, then the conviction is set aside and they don't have it on their record. But like I said, there's only 2 people that's ever been in our Calhoun County program, and they've only been in it since February, so it's underutilized.
So you, in the beginning, you plead guilty, but if you complete it, then your charge is basically
It's kind of like
dropped.
drug court or a pretrial deferment program.
Okay. And I think the other one that is the Success Academy.
Correct.
Can you tell us exactly what that is? Because I've never even heard of that.
That's basically it's like a school system for the children that have been in some problem for whatever reason, are not being able to be, their needs are not met in the public school system.
And if you win, you're going to be over that program.
What I would try and do, absolutely, is, what I would do is sit down and talk with Judge Laura Phillips, who previously had the Success Academy and previously had the juvenile drug court, find out what she did when it was so successful, and then implement that so it can get back like it was.
Well, when was that Veterans Court started? How long ago?
Well, the first person pled into it in February of 2014.
When was
My
it
understanding, the
funded?
grant was funded in 2012, and it was announced in 2013.
So what happened between 2012 and now?
I don't know.
Oh, but it just kind of started back up, or started initially?
Started initially.
And only 2 people are in it?
That's my understanding.
Okay. But you think it's a pretty valuable program?
Oh, I think it's a great program. There's other programs
Especially
nationwide.
for this area, it would seem it could be very important.
And there's a veterans program in other counties. There's veterans programs nationwide, and they've had wonderful success rates. Wonderful.
Peggy, we only have about 20 seconds left and before the show ends. Do you have anything left what you want to say here at the end about your race?
Please vote for Peggy, June 3rd, Republican primary, family court judge for Calhoun and Cleveland County.
Okay, well, thank you for coming on, and you've given
Thanks
us
for
some
being here.
good information. We've enjoyed having you, and we enjoyed you tuning in tonight. So we'll see you next week. We're on every Wednesday night at 9:30. See you in a week.